No one wants to fight. Heraclius's general, Theodore, writes Khalid ibn Walid a message. He says, why would we fight? We will give you, each of your guys, 10 gold coins. This year and next year. Just go home. We'll give you 10 gold coins. Khalid ibn Walid writes back to him. Actually, no, sorry, this was a meeting, face-to-face meeting between Theodore and Khalid ibn Walid. So Khalid ibn Walid says, Theodore says, I know you guys, you're poor. You're here because you're poor. You need food. You need money. Rather than fighting, I'll give you 10 gold coins, every single one of you, and you go home. Khalid bin Walid says, you think we need money and food? No, that's not why we're here. Now, you read this, you think the next line is going to be, no, we are here to spread the message of Allah, right? Not Khalid bin Walid. He doesn't say this. This is a man of the streets. He knows how to talk. He says, we have plenty of food, but we don't have our favorite delicacy, which is blood. We are a people who drink human blood. And word has reached us that there's no better human blood than Roman blood. Theodore left and says, these are a bunch of crazies. And then word spreads amongst the army, so he uses fear, rumors, crazy talk, distraction. These guys, they eat blood. So the first day of battle, Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Romans advance from the east side. And they advance down and they defeat the Muslims. And the Muslims suffer losses. And the Romans go back at night, and that's day one of the battle, the war. Behind the Romans now is a cliff. And to their, also at the end of the cliff is a bridge over water, over a big river. Behind the Muslims is desert. Day two of the battle. The Romans said, oh, the first day was successful. Let's try it again. So they try it again. But this time, Khalid ibn Walid moves the eastern side army up quickly, and they repel this advance. And in fact, they move into the Roman army. So the Roman army sends its horses to help defend. When Khalid ibn Walid sees all the horses moved over, he says, everyone advance forward where the horses are absent, because horses is the most dangerous thing. But the Romans answer him back. The Romans answer him back with an amount of arrows the Muslims had never seen before, and the Muslims are dropping like flies. And Khalid bin Walid says, retreat, everybody retreat. Romans 2, and the Muslims 0. Khalid bin Walid starts thinking, we don't have numbers, and we've never seen arrows flying at us like this. So he asks himself a question. How do you fight a people who have arrows? Because the arrow is fired from a far distance, and you can't even advance against him. Way before you get him, he's gotten to you. So he thinks and he realizes, he comes to a conclusion. There is one way to defeat arrows, because the arrow is based upon seeing. You have to be able to see who you're firing arrows at. So he says, therefore, we have to enlist our first of 3 special allies, the night. We will attack them in the night. If we attack at night, they won't see where we're going. So the arrow, they can't fire arrows at somebody they don't see. So that's the first special ally. Telling you, Khalid bin Walid wins this battle with 3 special allies. The first one is the night. He said, okay, we're going to attack them in the middle of the night. But you still have to kill, each one man has to kill, what's the math on this? 240 divided by 45. You have to kill at least 4 or 5 people. 5 people, how are you going to kill 5 people? First of all, in order to kill 5 people, you have to ensure that they cannot retreat. So Khalid bin Walid now sends a special group of people to go over the river and around the river, like you taught, up over the river and around, behind the bridge. That is the way that the Romans came in. They came in through a bridge. And there he said to them, light fires there so that they think that we're stationed there. So he had every man, woman, and child. He enlisted the women and the kids. Everybody, you have to light 10 fires of your own. So all night they spent lighting fires. So what did the Romans think? They thought that the bridge is covered. We can't go through the bridge. We can't attack at the bridge. We can't retreat because their Muslims are at the bridge. That was the second of the 3 allies that Khalid ibn Walid listed. The first ally was the night. The second ally was the fires. They're like, oh my gosh, there's so many Muslims encamped there. What's the third ally? He's so creative. You don't have to kill all these Romans to win the battle. Remember what's behind the Romans? A cliff. You just have to push them. So in the middle of the night, the same night, he launches a surprise attack. Surprise attack on the Romans. And they're in Roman territory immediately. The Romans can't fight, they can't fire arrows. Now it's too late because they didn't see them coming. They fought the Romans and pushed the Romans back until thousands of Romans were simply falling off the cliffs. And that's how they won the battle. The Muslims estimated that 100,000 Romans fell off the cliffs. And the Romans said, no, only 40,000. So you can estimate between 40 and 100,000 people fell off the cliffs. And that's how they died. That's how Khalid bin Walid won the war. He didn't, if you think, oh, there's 240 versus 45, and we got to kill like 8 people each. No, you don't, if you think creatively. So that's how Khalid bin Walid won the Battle of Yarmouk, it's called. Heraclius was stationed in Hims. And when he got news that we lost on day 3, Romans won day 1, Romans won day 2, and day 3 was the knockout punch by Khalid bin Walid. That's not even day 3. Before the sunrise, it was done. Because it was such a shock to the system. He used a surprise and shock strategy that nobody's expecting. All of this, you lit the fires, you're going to come at night, and you've already calculated that your victory is going to come by pushing them off the cliff. They fight, and as they're retreating, they're falling off the cliffs. 3 days. Lost the first 2 days, knocked him out in the middle of the night. That's Khalid ibn al-Walid. Now, why are we talking about this on Ashura? Because Ashura is not just the days of remembering the battle of Karbala, which was not a battle, it's more of an assassination. But is also, according to the scholars of Islam, a day to remember all the battles of Islam. To give yourself some context. The battles of Islam are divided in 3 categories, or 2 categories. The battles of the Prophet and the battles of the Sahabah. The battles of the Prophet that the Prophet attended, the major ones, or they were very big battles, are Badr, Uhud, Khandaq. Then you had the peace treaty of Hudaybiyah, in which it could have been a battle, but it wasn't. Then you had the conquest of Mecca, conquest of Khandaq, the calamity of Mu'tah against this is the first fight against the Romans. And the Battle of Mu'tah is where Khalid ibn al-Walid rose to power. That is 7 major battles in the time of the Prophet. Every Muslim should know them. 7. Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Peace Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Conquest of Mecca, Conquest of Ta'if, also known as the Battle of Hunayn, and then the Battle of Mu'tah in Jordan. Mu'tah today is in Jordan. 7 battles. Now the battles of the Sahaba, we divide them into 3 categories. The Ridda Wars in Arabia. Right after the Prophet died, everyone in Arabia except for a few cities rebelled. They rebelled against Abu Bakr and the Sahaba, except for Medina, of course, Mecca, Ta'if, and a few villages here and there. So the Sahaba had to quell all these rebellions. So we divided up into the battles of Ridda, then the battles of the conquests and the openings, that's the second category, and then the final battles, again, the 2 battles, Karbala and the battle of Hajjaj against the Zubayri Khilafah. 3 categories, 3 subcategories. The Ridda Wars, the conquests, and then the final 2 losses. The finale, you could call it. The Ridda Wars are 12. The Ridda Wars were inspired by 2 reasons. Number 1, false prophets. Number 2, people didn't leave Islam, but they said we don't have to report back to Abu Bakr. We're on our own now. We're Muslim, but we're on our own. Okay? That's 2 reasons. And they were divided up into 12 camps. By far, the biggest camp was that of Musaylima al-Kadhab. Musaylima al-Kadhab. He had 40,000 supporters. He claimed to be a prophet, and he said, in our new religion, we keep some things and we remove some things. What do we keep? We keep the mosque and we keep the speeches, like Jum'ah. That's where he gathers the people. But we remove 3 things: Salah, Siyam, and the prohibitions of alcohol and zina. So what religion is left? And they built around their town a huge wall, like the size of this wall, all around their town. So they were very hard to deal with. How are you going to defeat a people who have a wall that high? The methodology of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was a brilliant method, logical method. He said, I want an assessment of all the rebels. And they gave him the assessment. The assessment is, there are 2 categories of rebels. False prophets, in which there were 4. And then simply political rebels who said, we don't report to you anymore. And they were 8, totaling 12. Abu Bakr then said, we're going to take it one at a time. We will form 12 armies. This was a blessing in disguise. Why was it a blessing? Remember, when the Prophet conquered Mecca and Ta'if, he broke the egos of a lot of noble men. A lot of noble men were defeated, had to prove that they were proven wrong, like Abu Sufyan. But what did Abu Bakr do? He said, this is a time to cure their hearts. How? By making them the generals. Now when they go and they have 5,000 men with them reporting to them, he's going to feel good. Now when he goes and he fights for Islam, when you fight for something, it increases your loyalty to it. So this was a brilliant method by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to strengthen the former enemies in Mecca and Ta'if. And he put those men in charge of the battles. You notice when you look at the Ridda wars, you don't see Ali. You don't see the major Sahaba we know. Bilal, no. He puts in charge the people that were just defeated. Now is your time to shine. Abu Sufyan was in charge. Ikrimah, son of Abu Jahl, was in charge. All Khalid bin Walid was in charge. All of these, Amr ibn al-As, all the people who were feeling defeated by Muslims, proven wrong in front of their families, they can now go home to their wife and kids and say, I'm in charge of 10,000 and I'm going to war. And he dispatched 12 armies to each zone. Very logical thinking. All 12 of them succeeded on the first try except one. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl failed because his numbers were very small. So Abu Bakr sent him more men, and then he succeeded. So the record of the Ridda wars was 12-1. One loss, 12 victories. The hardest battle and the biggest battle was against Musaylim al-Kadhab. So Abu Bakr utilized Khalid ibn al-Walid. And Khalid ibn Walid, he defeated them until they retreated back into their castle, their huge city around with walls. Until one Muslim, he said, we're never going to get in unless someone sacrifices himself. He said, get a catapult and throw me over the city walls. Probably going to land, maybe break my legs and get killed, but I'll open the door. So in the middle of the night, when people were tired, people can't see, they catapulted him. Imagine getting catapulted up a wall like this, these walls here. It's not gonna be a nice fall. On top of that, you're gonna have swords on you right away. So he knew he has a very short time. So they catapult him just right barely over the wall. He opens the door, and of course he gets killed. But he opened the door. Once he opened the door, that was it. Musaylim al-Kadhab got so shocked, he started foaming at the mouth and he ran to escape. But the man who killed Hamza, Wahshi, he used the same spear to kill Musaylim al-Kadhab. So the first battles of the Sahaba, as we said, Sahaba battles are divided into three. The wars of rebellion in Arabia. That lasted 1 year and a half. And it solidified the people you thought may be your enemies on the inside, the Meccan and Ta'if new Muslims. They led these wars. So they feel proud. Abu Sufyan came home a winner, celebrated. Amr ibn al-As came home a winner. Khalid bin Walid. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl came home a winner with their heads up high, and celebrated as defenders of Islam. Now their loyalty to Islam was cemented. And now the Muslims could move to the second part of their history, which is the wars of conquest. The wars of conquest, the openings, are 13 in number. They are 13. And they began in the time of Abu Bakr, but overseen in the time of Umar. The conquests are as follows. The 13 conquests began with Iraq and Madain. Madain is now northeast Iraq. Then Damascus, then Jerusalem, then Egypt, then Alexandria, then the rest of Persia, and the rest of Iraq, then deep into Khurasan, then North Africa, Cyprus, Constantinople, Andalusia, and they end in the middle of the era of Uthman. 13 conquests. The major ones of them were Yarmouk, and Qadisiyah. Everything else is details. Just like if somebody were to conquer America, what's the big battle? It's Washington and New York. Political power and the economic power. Chicago, LA would maybe be second tier. Everything else is just a detail after that, because naturally everything else is going to fall. So when the Battle of Yarmouk occurred, and the Battle of Yarmouk happened against the Syria and the Romans. And if you missed it, Khalid ibn Walid won that battle by using the night and using fire and using cliffs to his advantage. There were 45,000, defeated 240,000. Qadisiyah was another bloodbath. A lot of people died in Qadisiyah. That was the battle against the Persians. The third category of Ridda wars, of the Sahabah's wars, they consisted of the finale. We can call it the finale. The end of the Sahabah's history as the leaders of the Ummah. And they occur in the era of Yazid and those who came after him. Okay? After the death of Muawiya, there were two Sahaba left that were making moves. The first was al-Hussein, and we all know that in his story, he never even makes it to his army. He's killed before he even reaches his army. And that's in the year 60 after the Hijrah. But the story of the Sahaba, many people don't realize it doesn't end there. There's about 9 years left of blessed rule. Many people don't know about this. And it's called the Zubayri Khilafah. The Khilafah of the grandson of Abu Bakr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And he only rules one city for 9 years. He rules Mecca. For 9 years, Mecca is under the rule of the great Sahabi Abdullah ibn Zubayr. So after Al-Hussein ibn Ali goes up to get to his army at Kufa, but the Umayyad army blocks him at Karbala and then kills all of them. They go down to Medina and they ransack the city of Medina. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La'ana Allahu man ahdatha fil madinati hadatha." May Allah curse anybody who sows fitna in the city of Medina. They killed anyone in the streets. They raped the women of Medina. And they used their horses in the mosque of the Prophets. They kept their horses in the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the horses, of course, have droppings, make bad smells, and do all these things. There was a young man whom Allah elevated in these days. His name is Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. And he was a disciple, a student of Abdullah ibn Umar. And they were talking. They were saying, they were in their homes. SubhanAllah, for the first time, Salah in the mosque of the Prophet is not going to be established because the soldiers are there and they're killing anybody. So Sa'id, he says, I have a solution for that. He got out and he started yelling and screaming and swaying until the soldiers said, leave him alone, he's just a crazy boy. He was a young man, like 15, 16 years old. And he started yelling and banging against the walls as if he was crazy. And he made his way into the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he starts calling the adhan. While he's acting crazy, he calls the adhan. So he prayed. And he did this every salah. I believe they said 17 prayers were not for 3 days plus. I believe that's the number that they said. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib was the only one calling adhan and iqama and praying in Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. As a result of that, Allah blessed him to become the most knowledgeable of the second generation of Muslims. Meaning, he never met the Prophet, but he studied with the Sahabah. He studied with Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abu Hurairah. And he became, after the Sahaba passed away, he was the chief. In Medina, nobody spoke unless first Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib spoke. So they did this in Medina, then they moved on to Mecca. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, while Al-Hussein was going up to Kufa, Abdullah ibn Zubayr took over Mecca. And he got the loyalty of the people of Mecca. He went around giving speeches. They said, yes, you'll be our chief. You're our Khalifa. You're our ruler. He formed an army. And he fortified the city of Mecca. So after Yazid's army did what they did in Medina, they kept going south to Mecca. By the time they arrived in Mecca, Abdullah ibn Zubayr had formed a wall. Nobody can pass. And they just were in front of each other for week after week after week, waiting to see, are we going to fight or not? Then lo and behold, one day they got up and left. What happened? Yazid died. Sayyidina Muawiya ibn Abi Sufyan, the Sahabi who is the father of Yazid, he said, I have an intuition that if my son becomes Khalifa, he will become upright. He'll make tawbah and he'll become upright. And if I'm wrong, then oh Allah, take him quickly so he doesn't ruin the ummah. So that is why Muawiya put Yazid in place. When people say Muawiya was extremely bad because of what he did, he fought Ali and he put Yazid in charge. We have to say, let's plot all the information we have about Muawiya. The Prophet ﷺ used Sayyidina Muawiya as a scribe to write two things: his own letters and the Quran. So what does that tell us about the Prophet's opinion of Muawiya's trustworthiness? It says that he trusts him. And it says that he's competent. Because you wouldn't hire a scribe unless he was competent. And by assigning him a job like that, in public, in front of everybody, the Prophet would be sitting, said, get me Muawiya. I want to write a letter. Well, there's Zayd bin Thabit. There's other Sahaba who know how to write letters, correct? Why would the Prophet ﷺ be sitting in the masjid and say to everybody, go find me Muawiya, I want to write a letter to King so-and-so? He's sending a message. He's saying, I know that Muawiya is competent and trustworthy. All right, so that's a piece of information. We also can't deny he actively fought Ali ibn Abi Talib. And he appoints his son Yazid. So how do we bring the two pieces of information together? We say that not every pious, trustworthy, competent, reliable person is right all the time. Sometimes they're wrong. And we have narrations that he commanded the khatib to curse Ali. So why did he do that? Well, in his mind, he did that to make sure that his people were loyal to him. Was it right? No, it wasn't right. But we don't believe Sahaba are sinless. And we don't believe their judgments are always correct. So what do we believe? We believe that they were sincere in their effort to uphold Islam. They were not hypocrites. They were sincere. If they're hypocrites, they wouldn't be Sahaba. That's what we believe. And that Allah, at the end of all their lives, Allah is pleased with them and forgives their sins. We believe they're sincere in Islam. If he knew he's doing something wrong, he would not do it. So we believe two things at once. You can believe someone's sincere and beloved by Allah, and you can believe he was wrong. He made a wrong judgment. Simple as that. Even if it was sinful. So that's the aqeedah of a Muslim towards Muawiya ibn Abi Sufyan. So your heart cannot hate any Sahabi, nor be annoyed with any Sahabi. On top of this, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not dare speak ill of my Sahaba. Why is that? It's above your pay grade. When your parents have a fight, you can say, oh, maybe one's right and maybe one's wrong, but this is above me. Allah put a limit. You don't go and talk about your parents and get involved in their business. So that's why Sayyidina Muawiya put Yazid in power. He said, I have an intuition that if he becomes responsible for the ummah, he'll become better. And oh Allah, if my intuition is wrong, then let him die quickly. And he died within 3 years. But in those 3 years, he caused a lot of problems. When he died, there was no son. He had no son. So the rule had to move to Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Marwan ibn al-Hakam and his descendants ruled thereafter. One of them was Abd al-Malik. Who knows what Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan built? He built the Dome of the Rock. Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan. When Abd al-Malik died, his brother took over. Who was his brother? Abd al-Aziz. Abd al-Aziz ibn Marwan. Abd al-Aziz ibn Marwan. He married a girl who was the granddaughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He married her. And their son was Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz. Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz was not in line to be Khalifa because now that Abd al-Aziz dies, it's gonna go to the sons of Abd al-Malik. Now, the monarchy has its own system. It'll go with the first generation, the first king, then all of his sons. Okay? Then usually that's where the fight begins. Where does it go next? Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz was sent to be a governor over Medina. When he arrived in Medina, everyone wanted to come out and see him because of how expensive his clothes were and how elite he was and rich he was. And he was just a boy, around 21 years old. So when he arrived in Medina, he gathered all the scholars and the elites to give his first speech. And there was the first test. Will he be arrogant over them or will he respect them? And he respected them. Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz, he's not the great Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz right away. He starts off as just an Umayyad boy, youth. He's prince. And he comes to Medina. And And he sees the shuyukh and he feels embarrassed. And he begins to humble himself in front of the shuyukh. Every time he's with the scholars, he humbles himself so much, the shuyukh begin to love him. And he begins to become a student of the shuyukh. And he starts studying knowledge. And people walk to the mosque and they think he's a student. They don't know he's the governor. That's how humble he was. He studied so much with the Sahabah that he himself became a scholar. By the end of his rule in Medina, the ulama and the Sahaba had taken Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz as one of their own. You're no longer Umayyad, you're us. You're Medina. You're one of us. You're not Umayyad. He does not Umayyad in his behavior. He stopped wearing the expensive clothes. He began to be humble. He began to be a scholar. He was so pious. And they began talking about the ummah and how we can fix the ummah, how we could do better. And he started to say, I wish now to become Khalifa. I want to be Khalifa now. I want to be the Khalifa. And Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz reached a level of wilaya as governor of Medina and student of the Sahaba that he said, there was never something that I wanted except Allah gave it to me. He was not in line to be the Khalifa. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused death after death to open the route. 2 deaths, premature deaths, occurred, causing the person who was on his deathbed to say, there's nobody left that's of age except Umar. So he called Umar and he said, I'm appointing you Khalifa on one condition. What is it? It's not going to go to you, it'll go back to my son when you die. When you die, it comes back to my son. He agreed. It's a deal. They made a deal. That was the deal. Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz, you become Khalifa, but when you die, don't say, it's going to my son. It's got to go back to my son, and he had everybody witness to that. So Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz became Khalifa, and he only ruled for 2 years. And he said everything right until his own family poisoned him. They killed him. But before that, in the meantime, we have to talk about the final battle of the Sahaba. For those who came late, we divided up the battles of Islam into 2 categories. The battles of the Prophet ﷺ and the battles of the Sahaba. The battles of the Sahaba divided into 3 categories. The battles of the rebels of Arabia, the rebellion, the Arabian rebellions, and the wars of apostasy, and they were 12. And then the conquests in the time of Umar and Uthman, and they were 13. And then the final 2 Sahaba who tried to restore the Khilafah. Al-Hussein, and he never even reached his army. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and he successfully ruled Mecca for 9 years. Finally, the Umayyads were able to get Mecca back. And they did that by hiring a crazy man, the Saddam Hussein of his era, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, he's from Ta'if. Why did they hire this man? Because they were having a hard time with Iraq. Iraq was a problem. They're always rebelling in Iraq. So they hired Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. Go and restore order in the name of the Umayyad Empire in Iraq. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf got to Iraq and he realized there's only one way to restore order, and that is to flow blood. Anyone who spoke immediately killed. Anybody. He restored order in Iraq. No more rebellions in Iraq. Oh, you did a good job. Why don't you take over Hijaz? All of Mecca and Medina and Taif is called Hijaz. Western Arabia is called Hijaz. Take over all of Hijaz. In fact, run the whole ummah for us. And he did. He ran the whole operation. It was his job to go to Mecca and take it back from Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And he went with such a huge army that everybody knew it's over. Zubayri Khilafah is over. He goes there, they fight. Abdullah ibn Zubayr, remember who his mother is. Asma bint Abi Bakr. By this time she was very old and she was blind. He gets to her and he says, tomorrow is the battle. And she prays for him and she says, go and die for the sake of Allah. And he did. Then Hajjaj hung his corpse onto a cross so that all people see what happens when you rebel against the Umayyad Empire. Now here's the funny thing. They're still all Arabs and related and Muslim. So the next day, after the battle's one day, finished, quick. Asma gets a knock on the door. Who is it? It's Hajjaj. He says, Ya Ummi Asma, I'm sorry, I'm here to apologize. I just had to do this. I had to kill my son. I had to kill your son. She said, you think I'm going to soften because of a visit? She puts her hands up. May Allah put you in the fire and burn every ounce of your skin and give you more skin and burn you again, until Hajjaj said, oh, that backfired. And he left. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, in this rebellion in Mecca, he even killed Sahaba hanging off the kiswa of the Kaaba, right at the Kaaba, hanging from the kiswa. Kill him. That's how crazy Hajjaj ibn Yusuf was. So he was from Taif. He was not Umayyad by blood. He was from Taif, and he was hired by the Umayyads, and he was crazy. At this point, the Muslims had had enough of Bani Umayyah. They had enough. And they began to plot. They began to plot the return and a revolution and the rule by Ahl al-Bayt. And everybody loves the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that began a secret group of people who plotted against Bani Umayyah in a long-winded plot that resulted in defeating them in all of their major outposts. However, there was a little bit of a trick, and that is when they said Ahl al-Bayt, they meant a cousin, and it was Abbas, one from the lineage of Abbas. They all thought from the lineage of Hassan or Hussein. No, it was from the lineage of Abbas. Technically, that's not a lie, because they are Ahl al-Bayt. So the rule of Bani Umayyad lasted 88 years. And then the rule of Abbas, the Bani Abbas, began. One of the descendants of al-Abbas, cousin, uncle of the Prophet, through his son Abdullah ibn Abbas. So he ruled. And that began 600 years, if I'm not mistaken, maybe less, of rule by Abbas, Bani Abbas. However, we have to give props to a certain group of people who did all the work. By the time the Bani Abbas took over, where did the Umayyads go? Who knows where the Bani Umayyah went? They had to flee. They went to Andalus. Bani Umayyah are the ones who built up monarchy and Andalus. And from then on, Andalus and Morocco was Umayyad territory for the next 400 years. Abbasi territory was from the east all the way to Andalus. But the people who did the work for the Bani Abbas were the Turks. The Turks. The Muslim Ummah owes the Turks gratitude from that time on. They ran the empire. By the end of the Bani Abbas empire, the Turks doing all the work. And just one Abbasi Khalifa, he doesn't even know what's going on. He lives in his palace, he cannot tell you what's going on. When the Mongols arrived, he was helpless, completely. So the Turks, we have to thank them for doing all the work at that time. There is now, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, 5 minutes about until Maghrib. We'll stop here. Talking today, the day of Ashura is really a day not just of one of the Islamic conquests or battles, which is Karbala, but all of the battles. And that's what we talked about today. We'll everyone turn towards the Qibla and sit in the rows you're going to pray in. Come and everybody sit as if you're about to make salah in the rows and face the Qibla, and we'll make dua until it is time for salah. Hamza, that mic over there. And Hamza. Alaikum, my man. Kif haluk, Jim? How are you? Alhamdulillah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Should I get on? No, gotta get the next one's going. Are you in other side?
Wow. Yeah, it's good. It's like Mecca almost.
On the top.